Thank you all for coming. On behalf of Parish President Dove, I want to welcome you to this very important planning meeting. Tonight's meeting, we're basically going to be covering two areas. One is reporting back on our long-term recovery plan and our Main Street Corridor Master Plan, which were planning efforts that we did a round of community meetings like this last fall around the parish. And then we'll move the discussion over into the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Money discussion, which is a new funding source that we weren't at that point at this time last year. So my name's Chris Pulaski. I'm Director of Planning and Zoning for Terrebonne Parish. Just to recognize a few of my counterparts, and we have Mr. Wayne Thibodeau, Planning Commissioner. Thank you for coming, Mr. Wayne. We have Candace Malden, our CFO, Jennifer Gerbasi, our Recovery Planner, BJ Schmill, where are you, BJ? He's our newest staff planner, and we have Kelly Venardo, our Housing and Human Services Director. Thank you all for being here tonight. But of course, thank you all for coming. So to move into the discussion, so again, last year, I think we had 7 meetings around the parish. We went to different communities because the thought process was that although there may be projects and ideas that are similar throughout the parish, generally speaking, the thought process was that what a community like Dulac may have as part of their main concern may not be the same as, say, a community like Schriever or Donner. So we had those meetings around the parish. So the plan that came out of that effort is our long-term recovery plan. So what it does is it outlines sort of general strategies for specific to Hurricane Ida and the impacts from that. But what types of projects do we feel would make Terrebonne Parish stronger, more resilient, address hazards? And a lot of it are projects that we've had maybe through other planning efforts like our hazard mitigation plan or some others, but most of it was from the feedback that we got from the community. Things like our community sewer expansion or other major infrastructure projects are part of that long-term recovery plan. But it also talks about, communities that would need, that are looking for community centers or things to build upon that community, especially those communities where they might be seeing a lot of people moving out of into other parts of the parish. On the right-hand side is our Houma Main Street Corridor Master Plan. That focuses primarily on the downtown area. We put that plan together in partnership with the Houma Restoration District, and their district is the properties that have that border along either Park Avenue or Main from Morgan Street to Grand Caillou Road, but the state legislature, I think next year, is going to look to move that boundary a little bit further out to Polk Street. But it really takes into account all of downtown Houma. And so its purpose is to also identify not only specific projects, but also strategies that can help boost the economic development of downtown. It talks about not just the streetscape and making it more pedestrian friendly with crosswalks and street trees and all that kind of stuff to improve the safety, getting rid of the truck traffic, all those kinds of things. But it also talks about how to attract businesses, what types of businesses would do well. There's a market study that went along with this. Also stressing the importance of having residential in the downtown area to support those businesses. And the residential and the infrastructure are on an equal plane. For those of you who may have tracked downtown Baton Rouge in the 90s and late 90s was a ghost town. In the 2000s, they really did a lot of improvements to downtown Baton Rouge, and it looked fantastic, but it really wasn't until they started having residential investment happen in the area that they started seeing the activation throughout the day and into the evening. And that helps in so many ways by having people out there. Both of these plans are available for a more detailed review online. The website is tpcg.org. So it's the parish's, Norman Parish website, tpcg.org/recovery. And so that'll have links to both of these documents because they're not super lengthy. It's not War and Peace. But they have links to that. It also goes into detail about what we're going to be talking about tonight. Thank you. I tend to do that. I forget about the other slides. And these are just some very high-level topics about what was discussed or what is discussed in these plans. But where they are right now is they're out for more public comment and review. Right now we're discussing them at the Planning Commission. That discussion was continued to the October meeting, which I'm not sure. I think it's the 19th, I think is the date of the Planning Commission October meeting. But once we're done and have those plans adopted by the Planning Commission, then we'd take the same plans to the Parish Council for adoption as well. And then once that's all taken care of, then the next step would be to start implementing those projects that were outlined in those plans. So that's where we roll over into tonight's discussion, because Community Development Block Grant, disaster recovery money, as well as other funding sources, it's what is going to make these projects and others like them happen. So I'm going to be turning it over to Stacy here, but we're getting double duty out of tonight. Okay, so we're reporting back on the previous plans, but we're also opening up a new discussion specifically for the Community Development Block Grant money. But I'll turn it over to Stacy. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. I don't know if I leave this here. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm French-Italian. Like to talk with my hands, probably. Okay, so good afternoon. Rolling into evening. Beautiful day out there. Super glad that you guys are here for the meeting and appreciate you taking this time to join the public meeting. This meeting is for Community Development Block Grant. We call it CDBG-DR. Lots of acronym letters. I'll try to stay away from those, or at least define them. But CDBG-DR funds, it's an allocation to Terrebonne Parish. And this is particularly about two programs, the Hometown Revitalization Program and the Resilient Communities Infrastructure Program. I'll get into the programs, but really want to touch on what is the purpose of the meeting. The purpose is meaningful input from the community and stakeholders who were impacted by the recent disasters. This money has come down from HUD, from the Housing and Urban Development, down to the state of Louisiana. And Louisiana Office of Community Development has decided to pass these two programs and these funds down to the parish level. Basically deciding and understanding that it is very important for the local parish to state their priorities, to really decide and make the critical decisions of where that money should be spent. And so these programs are an indication that the state recognizes this and has pushed down that money. How much money? Right now it is $41.4 million. I'll talk a little bit about how that's divided, but we're talking about $41.4 million in CDBG-DR funds. And it is a requirement of these funds to have at least one outreach meeting. The parish here has decided to have more than one, but really to engage the citizens who have been impacted and key stakeholders, nonprofit groups, other development groups, or community groups that are active in the area, and get input as to how to spend those funds. They also have looked very closely and prioritize low to moderate income, making sure that the most impacted communities, as well as those of maybe disadvantaged communities, the low to moderate income communities, are contacted as well. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well, about how we've been reaching out to get engagement as well across the board. Again, these are 2 specific programs. This is not particularly a meeting for homeowner repairs. I know a lot of people have probably seen, and I've seen it posted on the wall of the library up there, that there are specific meetings about the Restore program. While this money comes under the state money, it is not intended or can be used for home or homeowner repairs or rental housing directly. So that's just the way that these 2 specific program sources are designed. By saying that, I did want to step back a second and also highlight for you that the state on a whole has received over $2 billion from the federal government, from HUD in particular, for a assortment of programs to respond to the needs for the disaster. And so these programs are highlighted up here. And just, I won't get into all the programs, but you can see the Hometown Revitalization Program is under Economic Development, and the Resilient Communities down here in the lower left-hand corner is the Infrastructure Program that we're discussing tonight. And so the state has determined that these 2 particular programs, they're going to push the money down to the impacted parishes. It's been pushed down to all of the Ida and Laura Delta parishes by a formula of some sort of damage, the damage formula that was used by the state. Terrebonne, I think, was maybe number 2 or number 3 on the highest of the allocations, given the impact and the amount of damage in the parish. And I'm sorry, I did not do a proper introduction maybe of myself, so just Stacy Bonifants, I know he said my name, but I'm working with CSRS, and we have been engaged as disaster management consultants by the parish. So we've been working closely with Chris and team on both the recovery plans and on meeting all these requirements for CDBG. So to get into the 2 programs themselves that we're here to ask your input on how your leaders best in this parish can spend the money in these programs. The 2 programs, as I mentioned, Hometown Revitalization Program, keyword being revitalization. This one has to do a lot with economic development, revitalizing an economy, economic corridors, how to bring businesses back, how to develop jobs, how to train workers. All of that is really like about getting money flowing back into your economy. And there are some, ideas that been done in the past under economic revitalization, but there's also probably a lot of room for new ideas under that as well. But to give you an idea about what that program is, it's really looking at economic development in the local communities. The other program, and there's $24.7 million in that program. The Resilient Communities Infrastructure Program, a lot of words, but the key word to focus on there is infrastructure. That is your typical bread and butter. We need our stuff repaired. We need our drainage repaired. We need some breakwaters. We need things that are going to improve our flood mitigation, all of that typical infrastructure type of programs, with one addition. The state is very focused, as is the parish, on resiliency. So we're not just looking at building back what may have been damaged from the storm, maybe building on to what FEMA might be giving money to that is repaired by the storm, but also making it stronger, making it more resilient. What type of new or innovative ideas can we do that protects us from future disasters? We all don't want to think about any more coming, but we probably have to know that it's going to come again. So how do we make our property, our lives, all of our assets protected better in the future? And the amount of money designated for that program is $16.6 million. So now you can see where the 41 is divided into 2 programs. So I'm sure you've heard this many times, but it's federal funds. It comes with federal strings. And so that means basically that while the parish has been given the authority to spend these funds and to decide what to do with these funds, they also have been given some boundaries around which, you have to design the programs. Some of the biggest high-level requirements from HUD are that they have to be tied to the storm event. So, and that's simple, right? Almost everything that happens in Terrebonne is going to be related to the disasters and the recent disasters that hit. You are a declared parish, so the second bullet is already met, which is your most impacted area from the recent storms, 2020, 2021 storms. I'm going to get into a little bit more. Like I said, we have to benefit low to moderate income areas. So it has to meet a national objective of benefiting those of low to moderate income in an area. And then they also have added this new requirement related to a designation that is used by the Department of Transportation called disadvantaged communities. So we have to track that 40% of these dollars are also going to benefit or spent in a disadvantaged community. I don't think these are tight restrictions for you, but I think it's important to know as we look at where certain projects might be proposed. On that map, I have a map up there that, if you can see the legend, sorry if that's difficult to see, but the blue area is the disadvantaged community area. The dark gray area shows the LMI block grant group in the red outlined parish boundary, and then where it's kind of that lighter gray, it's an overlap of the areas. But basically, there's a few areas of the parish, probably some of those areas aren't I can't tell on this kind of map, maybe not fully occupied or whatever, but there are some areas that don't in itself meet an LMI national objective and probably would have to make sure that we cover the rest of the funds in the remaining part of the parish. LMI, I promised I'd try not to use too many acronyms, but I do think it's important to touch on just what is LMI, how is that defined, and it's super important to HUD. It's something that is a requirement and we have to tightly track. While we can come up with all priorities, if it doesn't meet this or criteria, there's nothing we can do about it. So, the LMI limits is a measurement that HUD does to take the average median income of an area and then decide who is like 50% below an area median income or 80% below an area median income. Takes in a few other factors besides just income, so that's why they put it in a table for every area. This is the Houma Thibodaux area limits for 2023, and it basically says if you look at a household of 4 people in a household, we go by the 80% and below. That means we meet LMI if it's benefiting someone of 80% and below. So a family of 4 is $58,000. That's the LMI limit. So it just gives you an idea. I feel like when I keep saying LMI, if we don't give you an idea of it, that it really doesn't quite put it in perspective. But it goes by the person in your family and the number of persons in a household. So on the outreach, as I mentioned, it is a requirement of the HUD funds, of these CDBG funds, in order to get the funds for the projects. They are encouraged to do as much stakeholder outreach and citizen participation as possible by multiple means. And that's what we have aimed to do. This meeting is only one piece of the input. Throughout the past couple of months, we've been having internal meetings, all of your agencies, the local leaders, council members, others have been consulted about what type of projects and priorities. But even above this, as was mentioned in the very beginning from Chris, you all have had a planning process that goes way even above what other parishes are doing right now. They didn't begin right away like you all did and started a planning process on your priorities. So I would say, you have a pretty big leg up of trying to at least identify where to spend these funds by the planning process you've already undertaken. But making sure that engagement with local officials, God bless you, Other government departments have been consulted and engaged, many here today. Thank you all for being here. And then most importantly, as we're talking about the impacted residents and those that are part of the community. Like we said, this public hearing is one. We are having another public hearing on October 3rd. You can get information on the flyers from that in the back. It's in Chauvin, right? Okay. And then we also, on the parish website and by QR code that is on your tables and around, there's a survey as well that we would like you to take that if you want with you. Pass it around your neighborhood, give it around to everybody. Everybody thinks, a lot of people are familiar with QR codes these days, and do the little survey and submit it in, and all of that input will be taken into account for these priorities and for the projects to be done with these funds. I'll try to be brief on this. We have more, I just think to put this into perspective, what is the money for, have listed here some specific examples under the two programs. So under the hometown revitalization, again, revitalization, we've done micro lending programs, small business assistance programs, business incubators, relocation of some government buildings into safer buildings. Maybe they were destroyed. Commercial revitalization, probably all the things mentioned in the downtown plan that fall under here as well. But many, options that HUD allows you to use this money for. A list of here just shows some of the ideas that have already surfaced up from the initial meetings that have already begun, of supporting the seafood industry, looking at development of some acquisitions of some of the downtown buildings that perhaps could be revitalized or put back into use, and some other options there. And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I interrupt you for a
Yes,
minute?
please.
And maybe more to him. So the meetings we had around the parishes, I attended a couple.
Do you want this? With this?
Those things by citizens were rolled up into this draft plan that she's referring to now?
So a lot of those projects are in the long-term recovery plan.
Not the HRP.
Well, these types of projects that have been received to date also came about. I guess to answer, you'll see them in both. But a lot of the information that we heard from those meetings, because CSRs, all the people in this room were with me at those meetings as well. So all of that information we've captured and began incorporating into the long-term recovery plan, the Main Street Master Plan, but they're going to be used for these plans as well.
And to add to that, there were probably some other projects that met funding sources, other funding sources. I think we also went through and culled that list to find out, like, maybe some of those projects were an HMGP FEMA project, or maybe some of those projects were DOT because they were more transportation. So the full list of projects that came out of those plans, we went through that list and tried to see which ones would meet the requirements of this funding source and pull them out so that you don't throw one in there that's never going to meet a requirement of HUD.
Can I ask you something? Where does the Bayou Towers stand with this government towers? This is a federal building. I live right across the street from it. And, it's been 2 years. It hasn't been really anything done, and I understand these things take time. And it's a lot of other things that needs to take place with other buildings and, downtown and those areas. But I live in a community, whereas we own most of our houses. And I understand this funding is not for homeowners. But I live right next to a federal building that I'm looking at day to day. My daughter can't really go and play around because it's things that are there that are not done. I haven't seen anything except for boards up. Now, I lost half my house. I was on the news. I was only given a certain amount of money from FEMA. Restore still hasn't gotten back to me with something else. And even when they did, they said, well, we want the money that FEMA gave you when I put it into getting a new roof. And there was somebody that said, well, why are you still working on your house? It's still 2 years later. I live in a low, what you want to say, a low income area or whatever. And for someone to ask me that, is a prominent person, and I'm looking at this high rise, and they haven't done anything except for put a gate up that fell down and boards up. It's, you know, it's kind of rhetorical in a sense. So I'm just asking,
That's right.
where does that part in my neighborhood fall at? Because we haven't heard anything.
Well, the high rise, you know, is HUD program, and, you know, Kelly, you're going to have to fact check me on this. But, you know, the Housing Authority, the Houma Housing Authority, and HUD have been, you know, trying to figure out what's going to happen with that structure. I know they were doing an environmental review to determine what all's in there, given the time frame in which it was constructed and all. But I think their immediate plan, their first thing is going to be, well, we got to demolish this structure. So, well, the next thing is, well, what happens to that property once the building is down? You better know what's going to happen to that property once the building is down before you start tearing the building down. Same thing with Senator Circle. That's another housing authority property. So although it isn't Terrebonne Parish, because it's the housing authority working with HUD, we still have the responsibility to push those groups along to say, okay, well, we have our Main Street Corridor Master Plan, let's say. Well, Monday, Kelly and I are meeting with the chairman of the Restoration District to talk specifically about housing downtown. And I mentioned earlier that Morgan Street is currently the boundary of that Restoration District. We're moving it to Polk Street. And the main reason for doing that is so that we capture the entire high-rise property as well as the old That Stanley property. Yeah. So we're going to develop, like we're going to be talking about specifically some housing that the Louisiana Housing Corporation, or housing programs that Louisiana Housing Corporation has, to see where we can bring those in. But that same Main Street program is going to be, just as us and the Restoration District will be able to use it as a tool for developing projects, I think the Housing Authority and HUD should be able to use the same thing. Look, this is what the parish wants. This is what the community wants for these locations. So let's follow their lead.
So where would that meeting take place? Just between you all?
Well, the meeting that I'm having with Kelly and Noah is just to find out more information. Kelly just attended the Housing Corporation conference earlier this week. So she's just going to come back to Noah and I and say, okay, guys, this is what I learned. You know, but we will be presenting these projects like in the future meetings we have. I don't know what the time frame on those projects would be.
Yeah, I think what is important is that it is part of the overall plan. And I was with Kelly at the housing conference in this week too. And I mean, we were brainstorming as well about, okay, if the housing is there, isn't there, if you're going to rebuild the housing, what about some of this funding that might actually help around the area as well? Like, while we, you know, you rightly picked up, we can't fund a homeowner or a rental in this program, but if the HUD dollars are going to actually either demolish or rebuild in that area, then what can we do around even sidewalks or lighting or demolition? You know, there are other costs that can be included. So your comments will be recorded for inclusion into this, you know, into this plan. I know we haven't really got into the official comment part, and I'm going to wrap this up quickly, but I appreciate that. I also used to work with the Restore program a long while back, so if I can help in any way about diving into Restore, because that program is supposed to help you, and that is, if it's not, it's supposed to help you, and if it's not, I really want to understand what's happening there, even though I don't work for them anymore. Yes.
Are these projects fixed?
No, these are just ideas. We wanted, you know, there was a debate whether we put anything on here or not, but we wanted to know that, like, there have been discussions going on. These are pulled out of the plans as ideas. This meeting is for you to tell us, I don't like number 1, 2, 3, or 4, I want number 6, or go on to the survey and tell us what you think is the best priority, so that the parish can make the best decisions. And it is the obligation of the parish to respond to you as well from these meetings. So we want to hear what you have to say, we want to know that we're meeting the needs, and we want you to reply to the survey, and we'll go through the public comment here. Just to complete this is some of the projects related to infrastructure. I think those are probably pretty straightforward. And then my last slide was just noting again the various ways to provide input. So we have the QR code. You can take a picture of that and the survey comes up. I mean, do your camera with that. But we also have this comment period is going to be open through the end of October for 30 days. So please share that with all of your neighbors, your groups, local groups. The more comments that the parish gets, the better it is for the plan. And when I say plan, I mean applications. So let me just also be clear, the next steps of this process. When you say timeline, it is very important, right? So OCD, State Office of OCD, gave the money down to the parish. The parish now has 3 months up until from almost today to turn in all of its applications, like series of projects of how they're going to spend $41.4 million. That can be 5 applications, it can be 25 applications, but they have told us exactly what they want to see. How much is it going to cost? What's the name of the project? Who does it benefit? What's the recovery response? So it'll be a series of applications, but that will have to be turned in somewhere between Christmas and New Year's. Great time of year. But we'll be turning that final proposal in up. So in these next 30 to 60 days, the parish really needs the input from you all about these projects. So after the 3-month period, we actually are going to give in those projects and some alternates as well. So more than the money that we have in case they throw out any of ours, we actually have more to fall back on. And not to be spoiler alert here, we are expecting that the parish is going to get more funds. So we definitely want to keep that list growing so that if you're not funded even with that first round, we have more projects in the hopper that are ready for another round of funds should we, when we get any final word on that. So 3 months, then OCD, the state, has to review them and make sure they meet all the check marks, like I said, all the federal requirements, make sure it's an eligible project. Hopefully they'll get back to the parish quickly, but in the meantime, we'll be doing everything we can to start, like anything that doesn't put money at risk, any of the designs or anything that can be done on those projects to get them moving that quickly. So that's really the timeline. Just 3 months after this plan is in, then we have to start moving on the projects. And the funds themselves have 6 years till they expire. So every penny of this has to be spent within 6 years, or else the feds take it back.
I'm sorry, would you reiterate when the initial process is done on you guys' part to turn information over to the parish from this meeting or likely?
It will be between Christmas and New Year's. Like it's 3 months from the date that they give you back your agreement, and we're just about getting that. So.
This meeting is the only source for input?
I'm sorry?
I was asking, was this meeting the only source for input?
Is this meeting the only source for input? No, we're having another meeting on October 3rd. It's not up there, but on October 3rd in Chauvin. We also have a survey that's on the parish website, but you can also access it through this little QR code. We also have hard copies of it in the back if you need one. You can fill it out and turn it to us, and we'll put it into the system. So, and then, or you could just call Chris, you could probably tell him. No, but it's best to have it in writing. It's all, if you can drop them off at the offices, any writing comments in writing are best, so we make sure they get incorporated.
And we're going to have, I'm thinking, at least 2 more meetings like this. We talked about that at the Planning Commission last week. So I talked to Jerome Boykin yesterday to see if we can get something set up. And we're also looking at something maybe in the Gibson-Donner area. This slide deck will be on that website, the tpcg.org/recovery. And I'd also like to see if maybe when we do that slide that had the different districts, the the LMI and the disadvantaged communities, if maybe we could have another slide or that at least is where people can zoom in, because I know everyone's looking at that and they're seeing Terrebonne Parish is a big parish, but if we can zero in, if we had the ability to zoom in and see where those areas are, especially, you know, in the more urbanized areas.
And I should put it on there, there's a HUD ArcGIS tool that's cool. You put Terrebonne Parish in and you can go all around and click all over it and you can see what the LMI is, but we'll do that for you.
Yeah, even if we put links to that. We're trying to make that particular web page sort of the one-stop shop, because if you've ever been on our website, there's a lot of information there, but it's hard to navigate. And so there's a lot of information just in what we presented tonight. So if we can sort of have that one website as sort of the housing or the location for all that to be, then so much the better. But, you know, the survey is on there.
Yeah,
This slide deck
we have
will be
some
there.
paper copies in the back. I don't know that we have enough for everybody, but if you want a paper copy, or just tell us, email it to you, but you can also get it, like you said, online.
So once we have those additional meetings
Sarah.
scheduled and everything, we'll be pushing it back out just like we did for these.
So I'm collecting these, if we really want to record recess.
Okay. Sarah's going to collect the comment cards, and the idea being that she's just going to call out your name, and I'll pass the microphone over to you, if you could, and make sure that we record the comments. This really is a little bit selfish. It helps us record your name and everything, so that this is a requirement of the funds, so we need to make sure we have it noted. So, Sarah, you have the first name?
And we are recording this tonight. It'll be a link on that same website to our YouTube page, our YouTube channel for the parish. So, you know, for anyone that you know that wanted to be here or couldn't, or if you wanted to go back and review what we discussed, you'll be able to do that online.
All right, the first card I have in my hand is from Mr. Bernard. Oh, he's right here.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, my comment, and we always talk about the drainage in the parish, and I appreciate the fact we're tearing down a lot of those old structures, but they're leaving the slabs, and I think it's very unsightly, and it's also, in my opinion, affecting the drainage, because you just got that slab there, which is it's not good for anything after they tear down the original building. I think there ought to be, I mean, they're tearing the buildings down because of the hurricane, most of it, so it ought to be able to be included in there to take the slab, take the slabs off, turn it back to grass. If somebody wants to come in later and build on it, that's fine. And use the crushed, broken concrete to shore up the shorelines in the parish.
Okay, thank you.
I think it'd be a 2-for-1 by tearing up the slabs and using busted concrete as coastal restoration. So it should be able to be included in it, in my opinion.
Okay, thanks. It's eligible type of project, depending on who owns the land, but thank you for that.
Thank you. And that comment went directly into our record, so thank you. Ms. Bett?
Betty, yes.
Betty, I'm so sorry.
And I just want to say 3 minutes if you can, just because we have a lot of folks. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. Thank you.
Yes, I apologize because I missed some of the slides.
That's okay.
My son. But also, y'all already addressed a couple of the questions that I had. One of them is, okay, so we have a comment period until October 28th for this meeting, which y'all are presenting the ideas. And we have to the 28th to comment on the ideas that y'all want to present. Then in December, between December and January, that's when the applications, we'll have another comment period to be able to comment on the actual applications?
No, the process right now is taking in all the ideas. So you're not really commenting, I mean, we gave you some ideas so that it can at least focus on that.
Okay.
But don't think of that as an exclusive list by any means. I mean, like this slab removal, now this is in the mix and this has to go back to the planning group to see how much money, can we do it, that kind of stuff. Is it a priority? How can we fit that into the mix? what you're asking, I think, is what happens after 3 months, at the time that these final list of priority
Like after you get the
projects.
application.
Right, they'll be posted on that website.
But we won't get to comment on them. So because you had stated that some of the projects, maybe they might throw them out, so y'all have some additionals in.
Right.
But we won't have any say on what the projects are that make it through. We just get to have a say on ideas that we would like to see in there, like elevation and.
That's right,
things like
that's
that.
right. That's right. But there is another round, potentially this next round of funding too. So once that list of projects gets developed, then, we will continue to take in input so that we know which ones for the
So-
next round.
The 28th, October 28th is when the public comment period will end for this allocation of money, okay, for this specific funding source. But we have BRIC, we have HMGP, we have other funding sources that some are on an annual cycle. The allocation that we're anticipating is coming our way will require another round of these meetings. So if we just have to put an end date, because we have that December 26th or whatever the day is that we have to submit those applications. That's a hard deadline. So we got to get those in. And then it'll take however long it takes for OCD and HUD to review those applications and tell us, this project is approved, this one's approved, this one isn't. You might have to go back to the drawing board.
After the applications are put onto the website, y'all had stated that y'all were going to try and update so we can break down in Terrebonne Parish, like what percentage of projects are going to be placed where. Because even on the survey that's on there, on the bottom of the survey, 3 out of the 4 questions are downtown revitalization. What about the rest of Terrebonne Parish? A majority of Terrebonne residents don't live downtown. I'm not using downtown facilities, I live on the east side,
Right.
So, things like that, so we'll be able to have a better idea and map of exactly where the projects that are chosen that we don't get to comment on are gonna be, placed or used.
Well, I guess once all the comments are funneled and the projects themselves are identified, then yes, we'll have, okay, this is the list, and some of them may be site-specific, some of them may be more parish-wide, right? But we can have those listed on there, and if you don't see a project that you had suggested or whatever, it doesn't mean that it's done and gone and off the table.
Right, I
Yeah.
understand that part. I
Yeah.
understand that there will be more projects, but for this pot of money that you're having us come and meet for, the only thing that we get to comment on is these ideas that you're presenting. We don't get to comment on the actual projects that get chosen.
I guess it's
Oh.
just how quickly we can have
Yeah,
that list developed and
I
back.
think that, I guess I would say stay tuned to that website, because right now we have, the ideas are growing over and above $41 million. And so there is a level of prioritization for how many people are benefiting, how high of a priority is it based on LMI, based on eligible activity, based on other things that are the requirements. And you're just asking, how can I see that? And so our goal is to put that up on the website so you can see what the prioritized list is that equals 41 million, then equals extra of 41 million, and then which ones maybe are.
That, and also it's like if you get, let's just throw a number out there that's easy to imagine. Let's say you get 10 projects and all 10 projects have to do with revitalization of downtown or West Side or 311 or something, and there's
Right.
nothing focusing for the south side of the parish or south of the intercoastal where a lot of these, a lot of money needs to be put because,
Well,
we're facing a lot
that's right.
down there, especially,
That's right.
with housing and elevation and things like, we need some of these funds that should
Yeah.
be directed towards the communities that need it, not the areas that already have it, that's already getting revitalized,
Right.
You're gonna take more money to revitalize even more areas that are not being impacted as heavily as south side of the parish. That's
Okay.
what-
No, you make
if the
very good point.
People don't actually get to comment, on the projects that get chosen, we just kind of get to put in, like, I would like home elevations for south side of the parish to be a priority project.
Right.
That's not a guarantee. I can only make that suggestion.
Right, but you can't for this one, because we can't do that for these funds. I wish we could, but we can't do home elevation. But I think when, right. No, and the goal is to be as transparent as possible on these projects. On the website, please, your point is very well made, and part of the prioritization of the parish is looking at geographic dispersion as well. So part of this is not just the criteria of meeting HUD's requirements, meeting LMI, DOT, all that disadvantaged community, but it's also looking at geographic dispersion.
And Candace mentioned too that the disaster recovery plan requires us to post a list of applications that we'll be making 7 days in advance of the submittal. Right.
Okay, we are moving on.
Thank you for that, though.
Sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you for those comments.
But I think that was.
Yeah, that's
before
me.
you came in.
I don't really need this, but I'll take it anyway. So I don't want to rehash what she said, but yeah, I don't see anything that I want to do up in there. So I want to put my name in the hat, whatever it is, because we showed up here and y'all already chose this stuff. So that's my question. Again, just to reiterate for me, that the next pot of money, I can put my IP in and I want it considered by whoever makes these decisions. And number two, how big is the next pot of money?
So
But the projects are not yet chosen.
those projects, again, are just ideas and priorities that we've identified based on public comment and input to date. I mean, we're here, it's our time too, so we're not going to waste our time either. I mean, what you guys say tonight, we're going to take into account, and we're going to, your idea for slab repurposing and that kind of stuff. I mean, any ideas, whatever you have, Spud, I mean, those are the projects that we're going to consider for not the future round of funding, just the future round, but this round as well.
No, I don't have anything in here. The money you're going to spend in this round doesn't affect me. So I'm going to put it.
But if you have an idea, then tell us so we can put it in for this round.
But
That's why we're
the
here.
additional funds are going to come down into these two programs. The state has identified that they're going to give another round of formula funds to these two programs. They haven't told us how much. We're still waiting. Candace asks them every time she talks to them because we try to push them to tell us how much money are we getting so we can plan for it. But they didn't tell us how much, but we think you can probably plan for almost the same amount, similar to that. But again, I want to be clear because this would be a violation of HUD for us to tell you that we came here to tell you these are your projects. Those were suggestions of what has come out of your recovery planning so far, and wanted to give you ideas about the types of projects that are already in consideration, that have been suggested, that might spark some ideas that you have to refine them or to give us some suggestions that we can include in the mix. So these two programs are open for suggestions. On the survey, while we're asked at easy, how high a priority are these certain things, there is free type boxes at the bottom. Be as specific as possible. I need a drainage ditch on my street at such and such coordinates. I mean, because kids can't get to school. Whatever it is, be as specific as possible on what you're suggesting, and it helps to define the projects.
And it could be that any of the projects that are put in the survey, while we look at it and say, well, this is a great idea, unfortunately it's not eligible for this funding, but we can take that same project idea and move it over into another funding source.
In addition,
It's not going to be thrown in the trash.
In addition, there's also an email. If you go on that kind of homepage, that landing page for the recovery, so if you want a free form, if you don't like the survey, there's an actual email address. Okay, I'm looking for Mr. Justin. Oops.
Hey, good evening. I was noticing when I looked at that, we're actually under contract to buy a building downtown that's been hit in a hurricane. We plan on opening an incubator with about 35 businesses in that building, and we've been working on that right now. My question would be, if we were to be able to fill out an application or get any type of, set on this next round of funding or this round of funding, with the construction starting halt me for qualifying for any of that type of funding? I know that I'm in a LMI. I saw the maps like 2 days ago, so I know that area is in LMI. I know that we qualify for that, but this may have been already somewhat allocated, or loosely allocated. I'm not saying it is, but it may have been. So, do you think that us starting construction would stop us from qualifying? And is there a place for us to compete for this or the next round of funding at the government level? Is there an application we can fill out with the parish, or, I'm just curious.
Well, what do you represent? Are you with a business group or something? Is that?
Yes, ma'am. We're opening a nonprofit for that particular building is our goal.
Okay.
So we plan on purchasing that building, coming in as a nonprofit and managing that building, and we're in communications with, early communications with some universities to be able to come in and supply other businesses in there. My hope is that if I create an incubator within a 3-year period, if we make it move out, guess what? They'll probably end up renting downtown and creating more businesses downtown. So that's kind of the goal. It's more of a, it's a big project that we're working on now. And I just noticed that I'm like 4 of the 7 suggestions. So just trying to figure out how can we do that.
Yeah. I would just warn against one of the key terms in HUD is a choice limiting action. So you can't, I know it's all these federal requirements, but you cannot make any choice limiting action, any decision on expending federal funds until you have an environmental clearance. So when you asked if I did construction and then I came back later and said, can you reimburse my construction? That is not going to be allowed. Sure. So if you're looking at developing an incubator, and then it sounds to me that is an idea and a thing that needs funding, that suggestion should be put into the request for projects. And I would say don't start. I mean, you cannot fund anything. Don't break ground, move dirt, anything, or that will preclude that work from being, and potentially the whole project, but especially that work, from being reimbursed with federal funds. Environmental clearance, NEPA, not excusable. They don't let you pass on that. Yeah. So if you have questions about it, I'm happy to go way deep into what you can and can't do. Yes, don't do it till you know you can, is what I would say. And that sounds like there's a really good project focusing in there. If we can make sure we get it onto the list, I think it sounds like there's something there you're recommending. I just can't grasp exactly what it is yet.
All right. That sounds good. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I do a point of clarification? So I'm kind of looking at the survey, and I hate to interrupt, it might eliminate some questions. When you look at the survey, it's not going to have the examples that they showed up here. It has infrastructure, expansion, whether you think it's high, medium, or low. Relocation of critical services to low-risk areas, high, medium, or low. And it has a blank to fill stuff out. So just kind of sharing with everybody. It's not like you're voting on the stuff they showed earlier. It's helping them determine priorities of different categories. So I may answer some questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawrence?
I've had the privilege of working with many of you there here. My name is Lawrence D. I run the food bank. I'd like to give you some information. Kelly, this parish has some extreme housing shortage issues, and especially with dealing that, if she can update us on some of the steps or where she sees maybe some possibilities we can consider the use of some of this. There are real problems. It's a domino effect, and I was hoping we can get some maybe information from her.
Can we finish our public comments?
Yeah. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to wait till the group's done?
Yeah.
So it's almost 6:30, so why don't you, if you want to go ahead and respond to Lawrence. It might help with some ideas too, so.
Well, I think, Stacy knows as well as I do that all the money that came down from HUD for Hurricane Ida for housing was the CEA was done for Louisiana Housing Corporation. So all the funding for housing went to Louisiana Housing Corporation, and they put out projects, and what they're doing is putting projects out to developers. Thank you. Right now, they have a draft on 3 that they're putting out to developers to develop multifamily housing in areas that were affected by Ida. I know that some developers are interested in Terrebonne, but we have no control over whether they come to Terrebonne or not. So we did not get any direct allocation of housing money from BUD or his ask.
People don't know what you face every day, and some of the stuff that we have major problems with the housing. And it's dominoing effect down to a lot of other places like the food bank and stuff too. So I was hoping some of this money could go to that.
No, this money cannot be used for housing. It could support housing, but it can't be used to build housing.
Chris, is that Kelly?
But Kelly I put this back up because Kelly has been an advocate, like I was saying, for some of these programs like this. This is actually the wrong name. It's RRDP now, Rental Restoration and Development. They changed the name of it. But this is all different pots of money that are being used. The Prime program, Middle Market program, all of these are funds being managed by LHC for developers. I know that's not the point of this meeting, but Kelly has been working with LHC as well to kind of, because some of the restrictions of the special flood hazard areas are affecting the ability of developers to do deals in Terrebonne Parish. It is by HUD's, by OCD's requirements and rules, you cannot build in a special flood hazard area. And a lot of the parish falls in that. But again, she's been advocating with the directors over there to try to get some leniency on that rule. So I won't make more comments on that, but I do think it's important to state, like, we are looking at these money. We are trying to get developers to come here and focus on areas that can build in, but then they just flew through those flood maps out that are kind of messing up things a little bit. So I know we're all trying to adjust to what that means for housing development in the parish.
Thank you, Stacy.
Mr. Craig. Mr. Craig Luke.
Thank you. Anybody don't know me, I live down in the Grand Cayuga area. My main reason for coming here tonight was just to, not that I can do anything, but try my best to ensure that there's an equitable distribution of these funds throughout the parish. I think one of the questions that have been answered that I had was if some of this money, I mean, you clearly said that it can't be used for elevations or home repairs, but it seems to suggest that you're able to use it on private property in some ways, because the downtown, you mentioned facades on private buildings and that sort of thing. One of the things that I feel we really need in my community down there is a general beautification, just trash and debris pickup. The problem is, so much of this is on private property. I've had conversations with people from the parish over the last few years, and they were always hesitant to say, well, you know, we can't use public money to go on someone's private property and clean it up. The problem is, you know, Grand Cayuga, unfortunately, with the demise of the fishing industry, shrimping industry in particular, I mean, we really, over the last 30 years or so, turned into a low-income area of the parish. And we were really flourishing if you turn back the clock 30 or 40 years ago. So the question is, and what my desire would be, is just to come up with some type of a way where these funds can be used to go on private property with permission of the owners. I mean, we got things like tractor trailers from old businesses, even if you go right down Dulard, you know, oyster shops and shrimp factories, you got heavy equipment, bulldozers, tractor trailers. I mean, how do you pick all that stuff up, you know? I mean, and it's not going to be done. It won't be done without public money helping us. Old boats, old cars in yards. So my point is, hopefully, if not through this round of money, somewhere else in the future, we can come up with some sort of a program with permission from private landowners that we can spend some of this money on trying to basically clean up the community.
Oh, you want to answer?
Yeah, I do. So for those of you tracking council meetings and things like that, I mean, our condemnations that we've initiated throughout the parish, I mean, you know, we've gone from anywhere between 50 to 100 on average that we have open to over 400. And the number just keeps climbing. But recently, Candace and her genius, we were able to pinpoint, it's called American Recovery. It's pandemic money. And when we looked closely at it, we realized that it can be used for things like to address blighted properties. So while we were staring at 400 plus condemnations, and that also means junk and trash and debris. That also means abandoned vehicles, sunken vessels, all those kinds of things. We're staring at all that in the face thinking, how on earth are we going to afford to remove all of this? And here's this money available. I mean, right now, Monday we introduced a budget amendment to the parish council, $1 million. So there's a 2-week holdover on that. So at the next round of council meetings, if that budget amendment is approved, then we can start moving forward and developing. Well, we already have those programs developed. That's the good news. It's just a matter of now we can move forward with start the cleanup on some of those areas. And that's private property that we're talking about. So.
Just a quick clarification. Yeah, just a quick clarification. My desire would be not to go through the process of nuisance abatement and actually file a complaint on people. Why don't we reach out to these people and develop a program and say, give us permission.
Yeah.
And because if you're going to go through nuisance abatement, you have property down there that people just can't afford it. The first option for nuisance abatement is clean it up yourself and you pay the cost. If not, you guys, the parish, are going to come clean it up, but you're going to send them a bill. They can't pay the bill, and you're going to put a lien on the property. We're trying to avoid that as much as possible.
No bills. Yeah, that $1 million would have no bill.
Thank you. Well, that's good.
So it's kind of like the PPD or the FEMA demolition program, but right now our mechanism is through the nuisance abatement. But I hear what you're saying. If we can develop something more aligned or more similar to the FEMA demolition program, but more specific to that, then perhaps we can do that.
Thank you.
Good idea.
Okay, we have 5 cards. I'm looking for Mr. Wayne.
Thank you. Well, I have a few observations, and perhaps the parish would be the person responsible for this. You know, but I'd like to see us label this as citizen participation and equitable engagement, not just public engagement, all right? Because the part of that HRP and that other money says citizen participation and equitable engagement. And when you talk about LMI and the protected classes and all the other stuff, underserved population, it's important that folks have a buy-in and they think that you value their input. And I don't think they get that impression right now. When I look at these 9 members on the Houma Restoration Board, they're all white. The parish has 22%, the city of Houma, 22% black, 5% native, 4% other races, and we don't have anybody other than white people on this 9-member board. And I don't know who did that and why they did that. And when you talk about LMI and the stuff that needs to be done and the input and the buy-in that you need from the whole community, you're not reflecting any interest when I look at these people on this board. So we gotta do different. We gotta speak different. We gotta act different. And then we convince people that we're serious about equality and getting the community involved all together.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Clarence?
Okay, if appropriate at this time, I would like to suggest a support for inclusion in the development of these projects. And that support would be offering or creating a component for offering working capital. A lot of people don't get involved, obviously, for a lot of different reasons. But most people that I know don't get involved because they can't get the working capital from a bank. Okay? So we're going to make this program all inclusive. Okay? We need to come up with support measures to ensure that. So that's my suggestion.
Are these new businesses or businesses with
Existing
losses?
businesses, new businesses,
Existing, okay,
Businesses, period.
okay. That's a program that's been done many times with these funds, so we'll put that,
So I would like to see that as a.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got you.
Mr. Justin Fitch.
Looking over the plan and just going back through some things I've done over the past few years in dealing with the governor, speaking in front of Congress, and just being a Gulf South advocate. When I started reading over the website, a lot of things came to the forefront and reminded me of the HUD program that basically removed everybody from the Olive Shawls. And it's mirroring that same process where this funding is coming from. And when you speak to the governor's task force and the governor's team, their presentation and their plan for the South Louisiana is basically adapt and retreat. And I feel this lends its hand powerfully when it comes to the people the east side of Terrebonne, the lower parishes, all along South Louisiana, that this is basically adding money to the adapt and retreat process that is being forced at every government along South of I-10. And I really don't want to see that. I really hope that this isn't another project to basically relocate people from the south of the parish to northernmost parts of the parish. And if you can actually help me in understanding that this isn't a pilot project to basically do a temperature check on if that is available or that can be done, I'd really like to see that happen and see, then I would be able to put my ideas in this process.
Yeah, so, I mean, the resettlement project was, of course, a project led by OCD, and you've heard that they have their hand on this, right? I was working with those guys throughout that entire process, and we still are, right? But this money and other funding sources for other projects that are, some you saw on this list, or types of projects on this list, some are for communities like Schriever, where people are retreating to or migrating to. But we need to be sure that we have a balance in here of projects that will go back to these communities. And also, we need to go beyond that, in my opinion, to look at policies and regulations. I mean, you know, every day we're dealing with people who, you know, have a business in, say, Chauvin area, that if that business goes, then that's just one more nail in that community's coffin. And that's just one of many examples of that.
That's
so
from the parish government divesting from the lower parts of the
So we need to make sure that we spend equitably and evenly this money to put in those communities. And maybe if it's not this funding stream, maybe it's another one. So again, like your comments and ideas, although they may not necessarily fall into what could be eligible through these two programs, and I know that's primarily why we're here, is to talk about these two programs, but you know, we have other people from my department and you know who have, and these guys are helping us with all of those funding sources. So those projects could come about through some of those as well.
Some of this funding also coming from the discretionary funds that was allocated to Terrebonne Parish?
Discretionary funds.
From the IRA and stuff like that. There was $84 million of discretionary funds.
Oh, is that the HMGP? So our hazard mitigation program, it started out, I think initially it was 16.7, and then it jumped up. So the first $16.7 million went into our home reconstruction program. And so that, of what we were talking about tonight in terms of people's homes, that's if Restore LA isn't working for you, if you're eligible for the reconstruction program, yes. But that's, I think what you're talking about is HMGP, which is it's different source of funding with different strings. Shorter strings.
But please be specific too on the surveys. I mean, the only way to reflect the priorities that you know and you want to protect is to give them in. Yeah, I mean, if we don't get them, then we're only able to reflect what people tell in the outreach meetings.
Mr. Henry.
Henri.
Henri, my apologies. Oh my gosh.
Hey, that's all right. My name's Henri Boulet. I'm the Executive Director of Morganza Action Coalition. And just thinking ahead of Terrebonne Parish's long-term resilience from tropical systems, once we have the Morganza system completed and able to fully close for a storm, I'm here to ask consideration that some of the resilient community infrastructure funds would be used for a Terrebonne Basin watershed pump station that would be down by the Houma Navigation Canal. And it would basically enhance the parish's ability to pump out huge amounts of rainfall we may be getting with these tropical systems. You look at what happened with Hurricane Harvey in Houston, it brought 51 inches of rain. And my concern is that we be able, once our system is closed and protecting us from the outside surges, we have to be able to pump out that rainfall that comes with a massive event. And this would do that. It would be capable of pumping 6,000 cubic feet per second. The parish has come up with a plan for it. They don't have all the funding. It's going to cost $110 million. They say they're going to build it in 2 phases. $55 million at first and $55 million on the second phase. But it would be able to pump out rainwater that would hit the lower lying communities of the parish first, especially Dularge and Dulac, 2 areas that got really hit hard by Hurricane Ida. And this would be kind of a last piece of the puzzle that our communities need to be more resilient from flooding. So thank you for your consideration of this. I'll submit it electronically to you more formally, but appreciate y'all's service to the parish tonight.
Thank you. And you can pass the mic to your friend. This is right next. Mr. Reggie.
Thank you. Reggie Dupree, Executive Director, Terrebonne Levy and Conservation District, former legislator, former parish councilman a long time ago. First, I want to concur with what he said. I'll give you an example of a rainfall that flooded a lot of homes, mostly in northern Terrebonne, Thibodeau area. 22 years ago, Tropical Storm Allison made landfall in Houston, Texas, and it put a 30-inch rainfall in Schriever and Thibodeau, and most of that area, Nichols and all went underwater. We have built the first lift of Morganza to the Gulf. We can handle a tidal surge of 9 feet now, 10 feet. But we can't handle 40-inch, 30-inch rain. So if you have water on the outside of the system, and you got to get it out. So this large pump station would help. I know that it would probably be the next phase of funding. And just let me remind you of the $600 million of flood control in the last 15 years with state and local sources. That's put on the ground. The only federal money before the Corps showed up that's on the ground is from CDBG, from Gustav Ida. We have about $35.5 million that went to REACH-E, the Cornish-Antalian project, Piper Canal floodgate, and REACH-L in Mahout Parish. That's all from local CDBG dollars that assisted us in building component parts of the system. So I fully support what he's talking about. There's also another smaller pump station that's under design in the Montague area. The parish has $5 million from the Department of Transportation. It's about a $9 or $10 million project that will help pump out in that area off by Terrebonne. Another project which we've been talking about for years and years is putting some type of gate, miter gate, between the twin spans, which I think the parish already has started, but another one in Company Canal and Bird, that is a big deal too, that would protect the entire southeastern part of Terrebonne Parish from the Intercoastal Canal all the way down, including Chauvin, Montague, Bird, East Houma, Mechanicville, is all in that portion of the parish I'm describing with these two gates, and but one of them is still not funded. The only project that one goal that we've done through the levee district, we're trying to raise the southern levees to 15 feet. We have some of them done, some of them funded. One is not funded as Reach I, which is in the lower Montague levee. There's one thing I'm going to tell you, Ida scared the hell out of me. If Solid Foods Levee District had not raised their levees to 17 and 18 feet in Golden Meadow, you would have had a catastrophic loss of life and property in Solid Foods. Because their old authorized height was 13 feet down by in Golden Meadow. You had debris at 17 feet. So just imagine, 60% of the people in Solid Foods did not evacuate. You would have had bodies floating all over the place around here. So that scared us, and that's why we focus in on these 15-foot levees. Now let me divert back away from my current job with the levee district, maybe as a former elected official, native of Cornishan, on the hometown revitalization. One thing we did recently, we participated with the parish and TIA on looking at safe harbor locations in southern Terrebonne, so commercial fishermen can tie up their vessels for tropical events. South of Fouche has one, but the problem is, it's padlocked every other day of the year except when there's a storm coming. It needs to be a multi-purpose facility, and you have room to put one in Montague, right across from the fire station down to the elementary school. It's already parish property. Just build something on the body side, a dock, be multi-use for other recreational activities. In Chauvin, just north of the Boudreaux Canal floodgate, and for Dulac and Dularge, I would suggest building something along Fargo Canal Road where everybody wants to go fishing anyway. They can go fishing from it. You have pilings to tie up boats for tropical events. That would be very, very big for the Bayou people. And then also, I won't even bring up the other body that people don't mention too much, and I never represented it as an elected official, is Gibson. Something needs to be built on the outside of the storm surge protection system in Gibson, back of Geraldine Road, so people can tie up. Now that these floodgates and pump stations are being built, they don't have access to go fishing anymore. So that's my comment.
Thank you. We love specific ideas. And then it looks like the last card I have in my hand, unless anyone else wants to give you one, is this Debbie.
And I am interested specifically in how businesses come in, if developers come in and build, will there ever be any supplement for the insurance costs that you're going to experience? Those FEMA maps are scary. I've had 4 houses I have to pay flood insurance on now. How is that going to be addressed long term? Because until that's taken care of, and forgive me if I just missed something that I came in late, can you please address that? Or drop it in the suggestion boxes, everything. Something's going to have to be done. Or else everything is useless. You can talk to developers all they want, but if that cost keeps going up, forget it.
Yeah, I don't live in a flood zone, and my flood insurance is going up. It's going up 18%. I checked with my insurance agent. If I were to write a new policy on my home, it would be, I think, $3,600 a year. So it's going to take me 14 years to get to $3,600 at an 18% annual increase. But guess what's going to happen in 14 years? It's going to go up again. So the flood maps, there's two things happening. Good question, too, by the way. One, we have the flood maps themselves. So those new maps were adopted and now are effective as of September 7th of this year. Now, we have already initiated what's called a community letter of map revision. And for some of you may have done a letter of map revision, or a LOMR, as it's called, with a surveyor on your own individual property. We're doing one for the entire parish. Basically, we're going to create our own flood maps, okay? Because the flood maps that were adopted, that sort of were pushed down our throat a little bit, did not take into account any of the projects that Mr. Reggie was referencing with Morganza to the Gulf, or the 30-some-odd pump stations and other drainage improvements that have happened in this parish since July of 2019. Okay, these computer models take months to run. Once they hit the enter button, those computers are churning and churning and churning for days, for weeks, for months. So when we were working with FEMA beginning in 2008, when they first introduced those maps, we were able to get them, okay, come with us and let's show you what we've done. And they finally got on board with that. But in June of 2019, they said, guys, we got to start the modeling. So they said, if your project's not done by July, it's not in there. So we've already initiated the process to basically create our own maps. We're going to present them to FEMA. And if all goes well, then we'll basically be putting out new maps that will have to go through that same process, but ultimately they would be adopted by the council. But they will be more reflective of what's really out there and the impact that it has. Now, those maps, this is the real rub. The maps have almost nothing to do with the rates anymore. The only thing that the maps do is say who's required to have flood insurance and who isn't. Now, on September 14th, President Dove, myself, President Chasson with Lafourche Parish, the State Attorney General's office, we were all in federal court as part of a 10-state, there's 15 parishes in Louisiana that signed on, but there's 10 states around the country suing FEMA for the risk rating 2.0 new rate methodology or determination. Because it's, in our opinion, unfounded, it's not data-based, and although they may say it is, they're not showing us, they're not being transparent with that data. So, but the real rub is here we are doing all these projects and we have all these maps and all this data, but it doesn't mean anything. You know what? You know how they calculate it? And I'm greatly paraphrasing it. Proximity to water. Well, how close is the water? Right there. Right there. And guess what? Rain is a flood source too. So I don't know really how that one works. So we, again, with 9 other states, are suing FEMA. The first, the preliminary hearing on the 14th was for an injunction to basically put a hold on it all so that the sliding scale stops wherever it freezes it, wherever you're at, and so on and so forth. And, if we can take a step back, I mean, FEMA has, when I was traveling around in a previous job, I mean, it was hard to get people to wrap their head around the idea that the land closer to the bayous in this part of the world is the high ground. We are distributaries, not tributaries. And a lot of the FEMA people, the bean counters and the folks putting these regulations and stuff, live in areas of tributaries. So the low points are by the water. And it's all feeding into the rivers. Now, once the Mississippi hits, we all know what the Mississippi does. So that's the root of it. It's just they need to go back to geography class. But we are. Those are the steps that we're taking. But it's tough. I mean, I know it knocked the wind out of several people's sails earlier when it was mentioned that the housing money can't be used in special flood hazard areas.
Y'all realize what that means?
Yeah.
The whole side of town you can't build on. Y'all realize that?
That's my whole part of adaptive retreat.
South of I-10, exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so I just want to talk about that. So the way that the rules are written now, that no new construction can be funded in a flood hazard area. So anyone here that applied for the rental restoration program knows that. So you may need to contact your state representatives and tell them that, you know, we have a big issue in Terrebonne Parish. The majority of our parish is in a flood hazard area now.
The whole parish is a flood zone.
Right.
Well,
And we locally have
state
done a lot of
develops the program.
things to prevent flooding, so I think that our representatives need to hear from everyone.
But Terrebonne Parish is in two different representations in the state map. The redrawn maps, Terrebonne Parish is split in half when it comes to state representation. So you contact both of them.
And let me say, I mean, I'm gonna always find some silver lining. That's just how my mama taught me, I guess. But so when FEMA, there was a time when FEMA said, okay, for our direct housing program, which are the FEMA trailers, not the state travel trailers, but the FEMA mobile homes that are out in the community, there was a time when you could not place those in special flood hazard areas, period. Now they say, okay, if the local jurisdiction agrees, we will, or requests it, we will allow you to place them in special flood hazard areas, and go one step further. If the community requests it, you can put it below the base flood elevation in special flood hazard areas. Because, I mean, think about that. If right after Ida, even though it took 4 months for that program to even show up with the first trailer, imagine if that trailer had to be 12 feet up in the air. I feel you. Look, and so that would mean that that foundation would have to be engineered and constructed and inspected and all of that, and an elevator, or if they needed that assistance, or a big old handicap ramp, and all that kind of stuff would have to been done for that temporary trailer. Thank God they allowed that to happen. And I had to remind FEMA at a meeting shortly after the hurricane. We had the head of Region 6 and the head of FEMA were on the 7th floor of the government tower. And I was asking about that, and they said, well, what's the status of it? Why hasn't it been implemented in Terrebonne yet? And I said, well, it's sitting on the desk of the director of Region 6 waiting for his signature. I didn't realize he was sitting right in front of me. But they got a kick out of that. But that got taken care of straight away. And the point I'm bringing up by saying that is there was a time when FEMA said you can't put these in special flood hazard areas. So it is possible to get that change made when there's some common sense brought into the discussion. So. Yes, ma'am. Hang on. Let me get you the mic.
At any point, will there be community review boards that's reflective of the community, investors, homeowners, business owners, whoever, to give just a ground level experience and actually to be heard? I don't feel like anything's going to happen. I tend to be a little assertive, and I'm going to take your advice. I'm going to sit in the representative's office. I have a habit of bringing my lunch and not leaving until somebody answers my question. So I just feel like growing up in this area is just a part of who I am. So the next meeting I look forward to, is that a part of where this is going long term? Because the ground needs to be heard consistently. You all are at the forefront, okay. here. There should be some type of community, I guess, council from different portions of the parish. Different unique experiences that for one reason or another has not been to the forefront. Is that feasible? Is that something that can happen?
Maybe that's a project some of this money can fund is actually getting the community.
Because otherwise we're spinning our wheels.
That's right.
Yeah. You know, let me start by saying there are a number of boards, commissions, groups that exist right now that need people on them. I mean, they just go month after month. I hear it every time at the council meeting. Open vacancy, open vacancy. I mean, there's so much. Now, I'm not saying that one of those might serve the purpose that you're speaking of. And just as there have been advisory councils that have been created, say, for recreation or other specific topics, certainly that could be something that we could look to create. I would just hope that we get that level of participation that such a topic would deserve, and it just doesn't become another vacant board.
Where I would go to parish council, to look for those committees?
Correct. A parish council. Start with your council person. That's a great idea. Yeah, we got a vacancy on the planning commission right now.
Exactly, and that's what I was gonna ask Mr. Wayne. Mr. Wayne, don't you people know that there are openings in those departments to apply for?
There's about to be another open.
Yeah.
We're about to have another vacancy on the Restoration District Board, so.
They weren't on there, so it's like, why aren't they applying?
I didn't know we had an application for the Restoration District Board.
No, but you were talking about the board that was just on that piece of paper just now.
That's the Houma District Restoration.
That's different.
Restoration, okay.
They're not a council. They're not populated the same way as the planning commission. Let's say, that legislation was created, and certain entities around the parish have the nominating power to nominate somebody to sit on that board. So I don't know.
Is there vacancies on boards that anybody
Yeah.
can apply for?
Yeah.
The general public, anybody.
I'm going to find out about that opening though and figure it out.
If the board is consistent of just certain people, it's because other people haven't applied for them. And if you want your voice to be heard, you have to apply for these positions.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, why not?
Because they have to be voted on.
The parish council votes on that, the whole council.
But they have to be voted on.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's not that you can apply for something in anticipation for sure.
Right.
It's not a guarantee, but that's with anything.
People are applying.
People are applying?
Well, the people I know are applying. We just applied for a Rec District 1 appointment. We didn't get it.
You didn't get it?
No, even though the person vacating was one of my people, as you refer to.
I want to thank
Don't
you
get
for your
excited about it,
time.
wasn't that big of a deal.
Thank you for coming.
Well, I'm sorry for that.
Okay, so real quick to what you were saying earlier about housing and insurance, so real quick, just to reply to what we were talking about with housing and insurance. So I do organize with Housing Louisiana, that is run by Ms. Anthony Morris, who's the founder and co-director of Housing, Housing Louisiana. We're actually starting a chapter here. Andrew Morris is her name, and she's the founder of Housing Louisiana in New Orleans. It started out in New Orleans, and they're actually branched out into the whole state of Louisiana. It's already been pretty mainstream in the Orleans Parish, but now they're starting out everywhere. And they're Housing Louisiana, and they're starting a chapter that's called Roll Up, Residents Organized for Louisiana Housing. And it's education for residents around monies that's coming into the state. So just like I was doing this is for housing needs, for insurance, for homeless, for elders, for is coming in that's affecting homeowners, renters, landowners, business owners. So if you want some more information, there's actually a state meeting that's gonna be happening October 5th, Zoom, so you don't have to leave your home, you can just do it over the computer. And I can get with you after and give you more information, but they're looking for people for the Houma Thibodeau chapter. Terrible, Houma chapter.
I don't know if it's 7 or 7:30.
Let's exchange information.
Yeah, now look, I mean, just to recap, I mean, this is not the only opportunity. We do have another meeting itself scheduled for October 3rd, which is Tuesday, at the Ward 7 Citizens Club, same time, 5:30. But as I mentioned, we're going to be scheduling some additional meetings later throughout the month of October. And then also that website. This video will be available. The survey is always available. The email, if anybody just wants to go launch on go to town on a track, that's fine. Put it in the email. There's several of us that get that email, so it won't get lost. Yes, sir.
Was any of the discussion here recorded or documented?
Yes, right behind you. So video.
I want to share something with you. I want to share something with you.
Okay.
So thank you all for coming.